From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Becoming Thin podcast, and I am your host, Chris Terrell, and welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you go through, and what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now, don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles, after all. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down, up again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and fat, and made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my real-life lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and to my systems of belief. Because it's all of those things that create the results in my life, and if I want to get new results, I'm going to have to go change all of those things, and the same goes for you, too. We talked about that in a previous episode of the podcast. So if you want to know more about the intro, why I do it, you might check out last week's episode, I believe it was. Well, you'd think I'd remember that. It was only a week ago, but I don't. I make a lot of content every week. It all starts to blur together after so many years of doing it. But I believe it was last week where I talked about the 6 things: your lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and your belief systems, and about a willingness to fail. These are the most important things. If you are not changing your lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and belief systems in a deeply noticeable way when measured over a long period of time being at least 6 months, probably more like a year or two, if you're not making noticeable changes that are very noticeable to you and others, you ain't changing enough. If you've spent your entire adult life, maybe even your entire life, battling weight in your mind, calling yourself fat in your mind, even though you were very much a normal average kid, right? That means the battle of weight began way back then. And what we think in our mind will become what happens in the world. I realized this on my weight loss journey. The no action occurs without a thought having preceded it at some point. There's no such thing as an action that occurs without a thought. Now, the thought doesn't have to happen immediately before the action, but it does have to happen before. And so when we start thinking, I'm big, I'm fat, I got all this weight on us, and we're not, well, what do you think we start doing? How do you think we start acting? For many of us, it wasn't a battle with weight. Instead, it was a battle with life. Life itself was difficult, was challenging, was making us go through things that were hard to endure. And we didn't know how to handle it. So what did we do? We did the best we knew how under the circumstances, given what we knew about ourselves and about the world. And we noticed that when we ate certain foods or we engaged in certain activities, regardless of how I was feeling when I began the activity, I began to feel better. I was getting hooked on video games, and I was eating. Now, thankfully, when I was growing up, online video games weren't a thing. You had to at least go to your friend's house to play and hook up your Xbox that way, or you had to go, well, before that, we'd have to just go play on each other's, PlayStation, right? Split screen. But as the internet and online gaming became more prevalent, I began to just stay home more, which made it easier to eat disrespectful amounts of food, disrespectful to my body, without any fear of judgment or anything from anybody else. And I think that's really interesting to see how life changes for that. And so many of you're younger than me listening. I see the metrics. I know a good chunk of you are younger than me. I'm 40. And if you are, honestly, only about 5 or 6 years younger than me, when you grew up, internet gaming and such was very prevalent. Streaming was becoming more prevalent. I still remember when Netflix first started streaming. There wasn't a lot on there, but it was only just a few years after that it was becoming more prevalent. It was starting to become easier and easier and easier to stay at home, which in turn made it easier and easier and easier to regularly, like daily, consume large volumes of ultra-processed foods, or just large volumes of food in general. And then, of course, our food supply started changing, and life started getting more stressful, and we didn't know how to handle it, and we did the best we knew how under the circumstances. So what did? We get onto social media, and And we're looking at everybody's pretty lives because in the beginning, none of us knew any better. We're all just sharing the good stuff, not realizing we're putting up fake fronts. We didn't know. We didn't know any better. We were just using Facebook. We didn't know. But then over time, we started realizing this is all fake. But too many people didn't know that, and they still thought it was real. And people started. It was just a very confusing time. And then we just kept getting hooked to our phones. And then our jobs, we used to be able to go home at the end of the day and your job couldn't reach you. And now your job can reach you 24/7, courtesy of the smartphone. And so what ended up happening is we started to become more stressed. And we did the best we knew how under the circumstances. So we would turn to food. And for many people, this turned into a chronic thing. Using food and long stretches of inactivity, of sedentary lifestyle. So pairing, not a great pairing if you want to stay thin. It's a great pairing if you want to get fat. Those are a great pairing. Lots of eating, lots of stress, lots of sitting, lots of sitting, and a lot of avoiding the things that are stressing you out with TV shows, movies, video games, scrolling, gossip, reality TV, shit going on at school with somebody else's kids' parents or whatever's going on at your local community. And just life gets stressful. And so what would we do? We would turn to food. And then next thing you know, you wake up one day and realize you're big. And you're like, oh, well, when did that happen? I'm 240 pounds. I was only like 215 last time I looked. I didn't think I'd gotten this big. I probably should do something about this. I don't think I like being 240 pounds. I don't know how to lose weight. What do I do about this? Clearly something I'm just doing making me gain weight. So I got to do something different, but what do I do? So I go on like Weight Watchers. This is early days for me. So that was a pretty easy one because calorie counting was hard. Y'all try to lose weight for the first time now. Calorie counting is like way easier than it used to be. It used to be way harder. Like just getting the information was tricky. Now you got the databases in your pocket, which really is helpful just having that database. So my Weight Watchers really was actually quite helpful, but they didn't have the psychological element. They didn't know any better. Or maybe they did, and they realized it was hard to monetize, so they didn't worry about it. People wanted diets, so they gave them diets, Market demanded it, so they supplied it. Supply and demand. Demand and supply. And so, many of us go to lose weight, but something happens. We notice something. I can't have as much food as I want. I can have as much food as I need. I just can't have as much as I want. And that started posing to be a problem. Because it's like, the reason why I was turning to the food was not always about emotion or about hunger. It was a lot of times about like, I just wanted to eat it. I wanted it. Why did I want it? Because I wanted it. Because it was fun. And why did I want it so bad? Because I was having to say no to a bunch of other shit in my life that I wanted to say, I was being controlled, and I'm in a job I don't like. I'm in this situation I don't like. I got to deal with this. My future's looking hopeless. My past stinks. You just look around your life and you're just like, this isn't how I want it. And you start feeling controlled, or maybe your life is great, but like you're going through a trauma, or you're going through a very difficult time of life. Maybe your parent got put in a nursing home, or maybe you broke your leg, or you lost your job, or your kid got sick, or I don't know. Or maybe your kid you're a full-time caretaker and that's stressing on you. That's weighing you down. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that life can come in and stress a person out to the absolute max limit that they got. Trust me. Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody has a special combination of crap that if they're dealing with it, they are going to reach max stress and begin to struggle. And so what do we do when we're struggling? We do our best. We do our best. We do the best we know how under the circumstances, given everything we know and also considering our mental and emotional state of mind at the time. Can I tell you how my emotional eating began? Like really, really ramped up. I know when it did. I didn't always know. I've had to do a lot of inner work to uncover the source of it. But for me, the real problematic emotional eating began when I was 15. I was living my life in Chicago. Now, actually, we got to go further back and get to set the scene. I moved a lot. When I was 2, I moved from Denver to Houston, moved twice in Houston. And then when I started kindergarten there, I can't remember if I started first grade or if I didn't start first grade. Somewhere around first grade, I was pulled out from there and moved to Philadelphia. We were only there for like 9 months. And then we got moved up to Rome, New York, which is Podunkville, New York. I don't know. There's nothing there that I can remember. I mean, I'm sure there's something there. I'm sure it's a nice place. Like, I have fond memories, but like I have never had a reason to go there. I've never met anybody from there. Like, but we moved and we lived out in the country, out in the woods. So we moved there. Didn't stay there long. And then we moved to a place called Tioga. Didn't stay there. Oh, we stayed there for several years. Started elementary school there, and then at 5th grade, actually it was earlier than that. Then we moved to Strawberry, Arkansas, population 265 people. Went to a school a little bit there. Got bullied, so I was just constantly changing schools. I had no friends. Every time I started making friends, they'd get ripped from me. And back then, when you didn't have social media, when you got ripped from a friend, when you moved, they were dead. You were dead. There was no staying in contact. Like I tried. It's just too difficult. It's just too difficult as a kid. Not when I moved as much as I did. I mean, my address wouldn't even stay the same. So, then we moved to Chicago, and I start 5th grade there. And it seemed like things were great. I was really liking this. 5th grade's a good year. The moving around was difficult. But it was all I knew. I didn't know any different. But I was really, 5th grade is when I was really beginning to want to feel like some stability in my life. And I was making friends for the first time. Had a few really good best friends. Another friend of mine, his name was Chris, actually. Man, I doubt he's ever listening to this, but he's still one of the best friends I've ever had. But Chris and I were good friends. And we got a kick that we had the same name. And he lived not too far from me, and I'd walk to his house, he'd walk to mine, and then we were going through middle school, and I was raised Mormon, as I've talked about here before, but where I was living in Chicago, I'd always been the weird social outcast Mormon kid before that, but when I got to Chicago, there was a lot of Mormons and a lot of Mormon kids in a big community, and nobody cared that I was Mormon. Like, just nobody cared. It never came up. For the first time in my life, I felt like a normal kid. And I was just another person in a sea of other persons. And I had my little friend group, and then making friends with another guy, a couple years ago, named John. We became great friends. I had so many great friends. Big friend group. Like 20 of us. Great church community, great school community. And I was really made it all the way to freshman year of high school. Started, did high school. There was a 4-year high school, so you started at freshman. And went through middle school, started at freshman, and planned my high school year out. Started planning my future, my college, all of it. And I was really, 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 really excited about the future that I was living. My life felt happy. It felt safe. It felt secure. And I felt like I belonged. And I had a place in this world. And then near the end of 1999, right before Y2K, I find out we're moving to Jonesboro, Arkansas in just a few months. Middle of the year, even. Middle of my freshman year. I only got to do 1 semester of my freshman year, and it was amazing. I loved the school. I loved it. The community. I loved my home. I loved my friends. I loved my life. And I found out it was being taken from me. And there was nothing I could do. I was a powerless 15-year-old kid about to move for my 17th time to Jonesboro, Arkansas, where I became, yet again, the strange Mormon boy, the outcast. Now I'm in the Bible Belt. Now it's even worse. Now not only do I not blend in and vanish into obscurity, no, I'm the weirdo. I could always tell when it was the preacher at the local Church of Christ that was having anti-Mormon day, and my supposed friends would come to me with pamphlets that their preacher had handed out so that this friend could come save me by trying to rip my belief systems to shreds. Just destroy my entire sense of morality. They would try. I'd have to defend myself as best I could. This is for my supposed friends. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know how to make friends anymore. Because I got there, I was also a little bitter. Moved from this vibrant, exciting, wonderful, cool town in the suburb of Chicago with an amazing school system and an amazing church to this little podunk town with, I didn't know anybody. I had no friends. I stood out as the Mormon kid. I didn't have a Southern accent. I had a Chicago accent, and people made fun of me for the way I talked. And the church was little. No, people weren't as proud about who their religion was, and I was unhappy. But I was expected to be happy, and I wanted to be happy. And food. I started eating then. And I started playing more games. I started retreating and just because it wasn't what I wanted. And thus began my emotional eating. And it worked. It got me through it. And as I continued on through the other hard things of life, as many of you know, the 20s can be pretty brutal, and I just kept eating. When life got more stressful, my eating got worse. I got into a marriage, and first weekend, my person looks at me and says, I don't know if a butterfly's going to look at you anymore. We just got married. This person says this to me to my face, just cold, emotionless, just staring right at me. I'm like 24, and I'm like, I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to make sense of this. And I remember going to the grocery store, and I walk over to the bakery section, and I look at the donuts, and I see them there, and I just buy a couple. And say, I can eat these before I get home. Just a couple of donuts. And that drive home was just ecstasy as I'm enjoying those donuts. Literally, I can't even wait till I get to the car. I am grabbing the bag and eating the donut on the way to the car. And then I'm eating the other one. And then I realized when I was at the grocery store another time, the donuts are still there. This is in the evening. Donuts are still there. These aren't like fresh donuts. These aren't like early morning donuts. These are end of day donuts. I'm not even eating good donuts. And so I did it again. And then sometimes I'd do 3. Because I could eat one in the parking lot, then eat 2 on the way home. One on the drive and one in the parking lot at my apartment. And I would make sure to eat it and throw away the bag and the receipt so that she wouldn't know I was buying and eating donuts every time I went to the grocery store because I wanted to keep it a secret. I didn't want anybody to know. Funny, here I am telling people on the internet, immortalizing it in a podcast. I've shared this story before, though. My emotional eating got in deep. Donuts on the drive was one of my favorites in that phase of life. Throughout my life, I've had different favorites that I would turn to, depending on where I was living, what I was doing. Now, I didn't develop something that I would say is a disorder, an eating disorder. I don't know that I had that, but I definitely had chronic emotional eating. Because emotional eating is a spectrum. On the one end of this spectrum, you have the very benign, mindless eating, boredom eating. It is emotional eating. It's not like, a lot of it you can take or leave, right? You're boredom eating because you're bored. You go do something and now you don't want to boredom eat, right? It's not a compulsion. right? You're not like making yourself bored so you can eat, right? You're just, I happen to be bored, so I want to eat. If I get occupied, I won't want to eat, right? No biggie. But of course, that's the benign end of the spectrum. Well, what about the other end, right? You can't have up without down. You can't have right without left. You can't have front without back. You can't have good without bad. You can't have salespeople without customers. There's always an opposite. So if the opposite of the benign end of the spectrum is this something you could take or leave, the inverse is something you cannot take or leave. It has entered into the compulsion territory. You are compelled to do it. In fact, your mind, your subconscious mind, is actively and always pursuing your compulsion, and it will create a state of distress, a state of pain within your mind, and an itch that will only be cured by one thing. And your mind is well aware of what that one thing is. And it won't leave it alone until you give in, until you have it. And sometimes it's shocking and scary how strong the urge can be, how quickly it can rise out of nothing. Now you're getting to the other end with like binge eating disorder or bulimia. Now there's other disorders, of course, with the under-eating variety. And then there's other eating disorders like the healthy eating variety. You have anorexia for the under-eating and orthorexia for the fear of eating unhealthy foods. So when you get into disorders, it gets to be it's not clear cut. And this is also something where I need to be clear. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I am just talking about this as a man who has worked with a lot of people that have struggled with weight, as a person who has struggled with weight his whole life, and a person who has made the last 5 years of my existence be focused on learning about this. And the last 3 years of my existence have been singularly focused on learning about weight gain and weight loss and obesity and emotional eating. And I've learned a lot. And there's a lot of things I wished I knew that I'd want to tell you about. And somebody in the Becoming Thin Facebook community asked if I could talk about something in the next episode, and I have decided to do that. How do you navigate overeating and intense cravings and food noise following recovering from an eating disorder / restrictive eating patterns? I thought this was a great question. It was a little broad, though. I didn't quite have a single thing I could latch onto, and I thought, well, rather than latching onto one thing, why don't I latch onto several? So I asked the community, hey, what question? See this post, everybody. What questions do you have? Put them down below. And several people had great questions. I'm looking at them right now on my screen. And I thought rather than me taking and dedicating a 15-minute segment to each question, I would just go through them cold and answer them with you. I've skimmed them, but I've not read them. So I'm going to read them cold with you, and I'm going to respond. Now, I may need to pause to collect my thoughts before I answer. I will edit the pauses out. But I'm going to announce that I'm going to pause, even though I'm going to do it, because I just want to point out that I am pausing to think. I think that is an important thing to see and to know. But I know that you don't want to sit and listen to me sit in silence for 45 seconds while I collect my thoughts. I'll edit out the silence. So with that, let's start with our first question. This first question comes from Amanda, who says, I'm having a hard time working my mind around honoring my hunger cues, as well as my fullness cues after having a binge eating disorder, but then went to the extreme of incredible undereating and ignoring my hunger, eating under 800 calories a day, got sick, etc. It's a hard line to walk and understand. Good question, Amanda. Now, again, I'm reading these cold, so I'm going to take a brief moment and collect my thoughts and then answer the question. Okay, I think what's important to remember is that emotional eating is always about control. that is always about freedom and autonomy. That's what it's about. That's what's driving it. That's what's compelling it, is this a need to restore the balance of control and autonomy as we perceive it within ourselves. Now, it doesn't have to be conscious. Now, I know if you know what I'm talking about, you get it. And if you don't, I know you're like, all right, I don't see how that's connected. It took me a little bit to connect it to. And the best way to really understand this is to pick up the book 8 Keys to End Emotional Eating by Howard S. Farkas. It's changed my life. I study it all the time. I constantly read it. It lives on my desk. It travels with me in my bag. I always have it. It is become my thing to help me keep my own emotional eating tendencies from ruling my life. But I think when we look at this, when I look at your comment here, you went from the extreme of binge eating disorder, right? That's the extreme, like I'm just having large volumes of food. I don't know if you did them in one sitting or if you did them over time. I'm not sure how it manifested for you. But then you went to the other extreme of undereating. And I actually teach about this in the guild. I call it the diet spectrum, but it's people will essentially tend to rubber band and they'll just go from one extreme to the other. And the answer is actually balance in the middle, Amanda. And it is difficult, but you got to break this down into smaller chunks and realize that your mind, if you were truly had binge eating disorder, that meant your mind was conditioned in such a way that this disorder was manifesting. You weren't born with it. It was something that was created within you. Doesn't matter how, for the purposes of what I'm saying right here. Just it was, and it probably wasn't purposeful. Just like I shared the story of mine, how mine was beginning. It wasn't purposeful per se. I mean, I was purposely choosing the food, but it's not like I was like, I'm going to, overeat, I'm binge eat or things like that. I wasn't thinking that. It was just like, I want these donuts. They're going to make me feel good. Oh, and now I feel guilty that I did this. This is shameful. I should hide this. And then I felt shameful around donuts, right? I began to associate the feelings of shame with donuts, even though donuts are nothing to be ashamed about. But you could see how I might pick that belief up because every time I have donuts, it follows up with a shame feeling, and I begin to associate and link those two together it's a concept called anchoring. Anchoring works all the time. I'm sure you already know about this. Like, I'm sure there are smells that if you smell it, you get whisked back to childhood almost immediately. Instantaneously, you begin to feel something different. That's because that smell is an anchor. It's an anchor point to a memory, and it triggers it. And so if I had donuts and associated shame, when I think donuts, shame shows up right there. And so when we're working through this binge eating disorder and you're coming back from it, it is very much like you are deprogramming yourself from the binge eating mindset, but you don't just deprogram yourself to nothing. You have to install a new system of beliefs on top of it. And what you don't realize is when you go back to the 800 calories a day, that's actually part of the binge eating mentality. It is called a binge restrict cycle. It is part of a much larger cycle that is happening. And awareness to the cycle is step one. So you might go look into the binge restrict cycle, which actually, here, let me tell you what the binge restrict cycle is. So a binge restrict cycle is, we're just going to start it with binge, right? But it's a circle. So there's not really a starting point. It's like a chicken egg problem. But so a person binges, right? It could be they get a case of the fuckets. They're eating to the point of discomfort, feeling totally out of control with food. It shows up in all different places. But what comes on the other side of the binge restrict side, the binge, is guilt and shame. There's something wrong with me. I feel bad for what I did. I feel like I'm a failure. Sometimes we even feel the urge to isolate more. And then we seek to cope with it, which sometimes the binging, which leads to shame, leads to more binging, which is a part of the cycle. But sometimes it begins with like intense exercise, or we're punishing ourselves. We're going to start a new diet. We're going to we're going to restrict foods away from ourselves. We're trying to we got to do something. And then what ends up happening is we begin to think the binge was a failure to control myself, to fully have control. And so we begin to restrict, we have restrictive thoughts. We literally try to restrict our own thoughts about food. Now, if it is a binge eating disorder, these are automatic. These thoughts, this cycle is completely subconscious. It's a compulsion. And so you're not choosing to do this. And you may not even know you're doing it. But we begin to restrict. You think it's the right thing to do. And you're like, when these overwhelming emotions show up, no, I got to control everything. And then, of course, you pop and you got all these thoughts of like, no, this food is bad. If I eat that food, I binge on that food. That food's bad. And then you have a little bit of like, oh, no, I'm already bad. So the shame shows up. And when the shame shows up, the desire to binge begins to manifest. And this is the cycle. So the 800 calorie swing the other way is not a pulling away from binge eating. It is actually a part of the bigger cycle at play. And so you got to become aware of the cycle and then become aware of the cycle happening within you in real time, not retroactively, not, oh, I was doing that cycle last month. No, I am in the cycle right now. And this is the phase I'm in. You need to be able to know where you're at and then go, okay, it's a cycle. What comes next? Okay, I don't know what to do, but I don't do that. I don't do that. But when you have it, when it's a compulsion, that's going to be much harder. You're going to need to use different techniques to help you work through that. And this is where, I need to now encourage you, if you have a binge eating disorder, that you should be working with a specialist that specializes in binge eating disorder. Don't just go to any old therapist. No. Don't just get to any old psychotherapist. They may or may not be trained with binge eating disorder and emotional eating. And so don't go thinking a dietitian knows how to fix this. This is a behavioral and psychological thing. This is not a food thing. Binge eating disorder is not created by food. It is created by something within the mind. And so as you're coming back, Amanda, from the binge eating disorder, and you have this, you have to break down the act of eating into its individual components and begin to learn them bit by bit by bit, just like learning to drive. So when you learn to drive, you have to learn how to do every little function that all of us that know how to drive don't even think about. Like, I don't think about turning. I don't think about reversing out of the driveway. I don't think about merging onto a highway or turning left on a busy intersection and shooting the gap. Like, I don't think about any of these things. I've been driving so long, I just do it. But I have taught kids how to drive. I have stepkids and I've had to teach them how to drive, and I've had to break it down. I've also had to lose weight. And it's literally the same thing. For me, it just starts with, hey, all right, I gotta figure out how to get a handle on my emotional eating. Perfect. Just start with, every time you eat, ask yourself 2 questions. Why am I eating, and why am I eating this? The thing that I'm about to eat, why am I eating it? And why am I eating in general? Just answer those 2 questions. However you want to ask them, just answer them every time you eat. And it'll increase your awareness to what you're doing in the present moment. And an increase in consciousness in the present moment while eating is the key to creating shifts. Because if you're not conscious and present in the moment when you're doing things, you can't pick a new choice. Retroactive awareness, becoming aware of the emotional eating after you've already eaten, isn't going to do you any good necessarily, because, or let me rephrase it, it'll do you good. It's just not going to get you new results. You're only going to get new results when you're aware in the moment. Great question, Amanda. Next one is from Danielle. She says, I struggle with the all or nothing pattern. I believe that's what's caused some eating disorders for me and a negative mindset around dieting. I seem to overcomplicate things. My question would be how to not be all or nothing and calm the thoughts of food noise when you're used to that pattern. Good question, Danielle. I would refer to what I was just saying with Amanda about the binge restrict cycle. And I'm actually going to double down on the answer I gave of you've got to break it down into its individual components. So Danielle, you talk about overcomplicating things. More than likely, the reason why it's overcomplicated is you're trying to work on too many things at once. You have to, coming back from a deeply instilled emotional eating or an eating disorder is going to be a humbling journey. You will have to take humblingly small steps and work on humblingly small things. Like, why am I eating? Just, that's it. I know you're going to be like, well, no, I feel like I should be doing more. I should be restricting. I should be pulling back. I should be counting my calories. I should be making sure I'm eating less. I should be working on losing weight. It's like, no, you don't. When I take on a one-on-one client, I only take on one-on-one clients where emotional eating is a big part of it. It's got to play a part. It doesn't have to be like a massive part, but it's got to be a part because that's who I want to work with. That's what I've decided. And because people that have struggles with that, they don't have a lot of people they can go to. And one of the things I do is, the person will usually come to me like, I want to lose weight. I'm like, cool, great. We're going to not worry about that right now at all. Why are you eating? What do you mean? I'm like, why'd you eat yesterday? Like, tell me everything you ate. Why did you eat it? Well, I don't know. I didn't think about that. I'm like, perfect. You are not ready to lose weight. Like, until you can answer that question on everything you eat for a few days in a row, like, you don't have enough awareness. You don't have enough consciousness to the act of eating. And you're going to self-sabotage and you're going to get all down on yourself. We got to start simpler. And for me, I know this works, but it is natural. I see it every single time a person wants to do more, because you should feel like you could make more changes. You should not feel maxed out when you're doing this, because if you're maxed out, if life gets even a little bit stressful, you're already maxed out. You have no headroom. We got to leave a little bit of headroom. So if your life gets crazy busy, we're not trying to change too many things at once. So I would actually challenge your thought of how to not be an all or nothing. And instead, I'm going to reframe that. I want you to be all in just on one or two things, though. Don't be all in. Don't half-ass 5 things. Whole-ass one thing. All right? Whole-ass, how do I know, or why am I eating? Every day. Why am I eating? Why am I eating this? If you are struggling with emotional eating right now and you don't know what to do and you want to begin the process of turning around, of like, all right, I don't know how to stop, but I'm going to start trying to stop, and I don't know what to do. I'm going to answer that question for you. Just every time you eat for like 2 weeks, every time you eat, ask yourself, why am I eating? Why am I eating this? Every time food crosses your lips, every single time. When you will learn so much doing that. It is going to be such an eye-opening experience, and it'll help you move to the next steps. So all in on one thing, Danielle. Not all in on everything. And I think it's the doing everything that is causing the overcomplication, and which is typical with diets, right? A quote unquote diet, a traditional diet, usually involves a complete and sudden changeover overnight. Hey, by the way, real quick before I move on to the next question, everybody, if you like this, if you find this sorts of information helpful, this is the sort of stuff I talk about in the Guild all the time. We do live streams talking about this. I do office hours talking about this. I have emotional eating courses about this, and the Guild doors are going to open again for the first time in a while. And I'm only communicating with people on the wait list. So if you want to get on the wait list, head to theguildofchampions.com. And when you go to click to join the Guild, it's going to put you on a wait list because the doors aren't open. So you can go and click like you're going to join it. And it's just going to put you on a wait list, prompt you to join the wait list. And I'm only emailing them. And I've emailed them a couple of times this week already. I sent you a free, those of you that are on the wait list, I emailed you some free samples of Guild meetings, like full-fledged, hour-long, a couple of my favorite sessions. And I'm going to email you a little bit more. The doors are opening next week. I'm taking you personally through a 4-week orientation program for new members in the Guild. And you'll be joining us. You'll be the first members joining us on our new platform, Circle. We've already migrated over. And I've got a special offer coming. So just know that that's coming for those of you that are on the wait list. guildofchampions.com. All right, moving on. Ella asks, how do you handle the loss of identity that comes with not being the disciplined one anymore, but still actively trying to lose weight? Like, I don't want to go back to constantly restricting because it only led to binging down the road. But it's also the only way I know how to lose weight. Every time I try the slow way, it feels like it's not working and I start spiraling again. Good question, Ella. And a totally understandable position to find yourself in. This is what I was talking about earlier with the pattern. Remember, your mind has been conditioned to want to execute the pattern. And the pattern doesn't play out over days, it plays out over weeks and months. And it repeats in a cycle, moving into the next phase. And you get stuck in it. And so you don't want to go back to restricting because it sounds like in your comment, you said here, I don't want to go back to constantly restricting because it only led to binging down the road. So you are seeing the binge restrict cycle. You know that if you launch into restriction, on the other side of restriction is binging. So if you choose restriction, you are choosing to likely binge later. You know this, you can see it. And now it is creating this bit of confusion in you because that is the path you've always gone. You want to lose weight. And every time you've lost weight, you've always looked at restriction, but you know that it doesn't actually result in weight loss, not long term. It's only temporary weight loss followed by regain. And you don't want to get stuck in this cycle again. But when you don't go the slow way, you pick the new path, your brain feels like it's not working. And I start spiraling again. Let me say what you meant that you didn't say. My mind makes up a story that it isn't working and I believe it. and I spiral again. Because you're using your old playbook to detect progress. Many of us, when we go to our old playbook, we're used to losing weight quick. We're used to feeling restricted. We're used to feeling like it's difficult, feeling overwhelmed, feeling deprived. These are signals in the old ways that you're making changes, that you're doing it a new way, that you're becoming what you want to be, all right? It's actually what you're looking for, is that feeling. And when it's missing, and you're also used to seeing the scale go down constantly and rapidly, when all of that is missing, you don't have any point of reference. You don't feel like you're moving forward. And again, I'm using the same language, but you don't think you're moving forward. You don't know how to tell a story of progress because you've never done it this way before. This is why it is so important to have a guide, to have people that can walk you through this. Now, I know you can lone wolf it, but again, if you were in the guild, like you would just know the answer to this, like, because we would be helping remind you that no, everything's fine. Yeah, you're totally okay. Yeah, and scale doesn't go down every week. We would help you learn about the different types of progress indicators. Like, well, hey, are you going down in size? Yeah. Hey, what about behavior changes? Oh, actually, hold on. Let me pause this. I'm gonna go get a section of a book. 1 second. All right, I'm in the 8 Keys to End Emotional Eating on page 61, second paragraph. I'm going to read something to you. I think this will really resonate with what we're talking about here. So Dr. Howard Farkas sees patients saw patients. And so he's talking about an observation here. He says, I soon began to notice that my patients seem very anxious about weighing in. Before stepping on the scale, they would, of course, take their shoes off. But then sweaters, belts, and scarves came off as well. Those who had pockets would empty them of their keys, coins, and even hard candies before removing their watches and jewelry. I understood that they were anxious to see that they were making progress, but their focus and concern appeared to be more about the number on the scale than about the behavioral changes that they were working on to lose weight. Over time, they would usually lose weight, but from 1 week to the next, progress was gradual and didn't always move in a continuous downward direction. Meanwhile, all the positive efforts my patients were making between sessions seemed less important to them than that number. You see, this is one of the things that we don't focus on. When you talk about you don't feel like it's working, Ella, well, are you looking for results on the scale or are you looking for behavioral changes? Because the behavioral changes lead to the results on the scale. So I'm going to skip ahead to page 63 in the book. 62. I'm going to read one more thing. Yeah, where do I want to pick up here? Yeah. When the number on the display settled, I could see her practically deflate. Not only did it fail to reflect her efforts, but she actually gained 2 pounds from the previous week. Rather than telling me about the great food choices she made and the number of steps she recorded on her pedometer, she talked about how she felt like giving up. The entire session that week consisted of me trying to talk her out of quitting the program. Since that day, I've never weighed a patient. So I, too, in all of my programs, I don't weigh. I don't have people turn in weigh numbers. I very, very, very infrequently look at the number. All I want to talk about is behavior changes. I want to talk about thought changes. I want to talk about mentality changes. Because I know if we hyper-focus on this stuff, over time, things are going to change. So let's continue on to, again, page 63. Weight loss happens eventually when you consistently make different choices than you did in the past. The scale only shows how quickly and to what degree your body is responding to those behaviors until it reaches its comfort zone. That may or may not be an accurate reflection of your efforts. But if the real goal is to make those choices and engage in those behaviors more consistently, then a more meaningful way to track your progress would be a measure that reflects those efforts directly. So I'm going to skip ahead here. The solution I recommend is to use a calendar instead of the scale. This method of measurement is very simple. Identify 3 new behaviors that you want to work on. I usually recommend choosing one from each of the 3 categories: eating, exercise, and lifestyle. So what he's talking about here is begin focusing on the behavior changes you're making and celebrate that you are behaving differently. Every time you make a choice that is different than what you would normally do, that is a win. That is a celebration. You keep doing that, the changes will eventually come, Ella. And so I was having a conversation with somebody in the guild just the other day. They were talking about, we had to say the signal of feeling like you could be doing more or like it's not working. That is actually a signal you're doing it right. Because if you can point to behavior changes you're making, but you feel like it's not working, that's good. That means you're going slow enough. But if you can't point to specific behavior changes you're making, you're not going fast enough, right? Yeah, that feeling of like, I'm not progressing is well-founded, right? So there's a little butter zone right there. You just want to get right in the sweet spot where you feel like you're not doing enough, but you can cognitively say what you're doing different. That's the sweet spot that we're looking for, Ella. Next question from Julia. I'm over a year into my journey and I still get so sucked into that all or nothing mindset. It's a mental struggle more often than not. Recently, I had my first weight gain since I started my journey, and fighting the food noise has been harder than ever. It's like something inside my head is giving up for me. I'm not giving up, but every day is a battle not to binge, a battle to discover balance. It's been truly difficult to make the conscious decision to not eat or to eat well. Don't know if this is a question, but it felt relevant. Yeah, I did not hear a question in there, but there are definitely some thoughts that I think I'll give a couple of comments on. First, this getting sucked into this all or nothing mindset, everybody, if you haven't noticed, that's a pattern, that's a trend, that's a normal thing. This is something that most people, when coming back from emotional eating, this is a cognitive distortion that keeps people stuck, this all or nothing thinking. So the answer is sort of a bummer of this one. It's you're going to feel the urge to do all or nothing, and you're just going to not give in. You're just going to not do it. And you're going to feel a little uncomfortable about it at first. You're going to throw a little bit of a mini tantrum in your mind at first. You just have to hold the line. And then eventually your brain will let go of it. But it is you just have to act in defiance of the all or nothing mindset. But what can be helpful is having other supportive people encouraging you so that when you're feeling a little confused in your own mind, which is a completely normal and natural experience to have, there's nothing wrong, no shame in it. That's why it's important to be around a community that gets that. You can talk to them about like, I'm having a struggle. I'm feeling this all or nothing mindset in, and I don't want to give in, but it's so strong. Don't give in, right? Get a support group. Get a support group of people that will encourage you to keep going, to not go all in and burn yourself out, because you got to prevent burnout. You have to prevent yourself from burning out. And it is natural that the food noise shows up when the scale goes up, because remember, you still have your old conditioning in your mind, and your old conditioning in your mind says that when the scale doesn't go down, you are failing. That is not true. That is just a belief. It is an old belief that is still in your system, and the trigger of the scale not going down is being fired off, and the scale is an anchor. And so when it goes up, it anchors, seeing it goes up is anchored to an old thought pattern that fires off. It's just waiting in your mind for the trigger. That is natural that you feel the food noise. The hard part is, what do you do with it? This is where cognitive behavioral therapy can really come into play here. You use techniques from CBT to reframe how you're thinking about and looking at it. On my journey, I called it entering the spin zone. It's like a politician that spins everything to their benefit. I'm like, you're going to spin everything to my favor. I'm going to twist and distort the facts. I'm making up stories about life anyway, so I might as well make up stories that benefit me. And yeah, there it is. Let's see. More information about the mindset of people who have never struggled with their weight. Well, actually, when it comes to emotionally eating, weight is irrelevant. Weight is an irrelevant factor. I don't have people reporting weight. When we're working on emotional eating, it does not matter what you weigh. The challenges are the same. You still got to shift. You still got to change. Just because a person has figured out how to compensate, that doesn't mean it's not a problem. All right. Let's see. Andy. Okay, I did read this question, Andy. You did call out there is one aspect of this I'm not really going to be able to comment on much, but you called it out. I'll let your comment speak for it. But Andy says, I'm a 47-year-old autistic and diagnosed binge eating disorder. Mind you, I've come a long way. I haven't binged in almost a year. By the way, congratulations. But because I easily become overstimulated by external stressors, the urge revisits me quite often. As a child, food was the Band-Aid applied to calm me when I stemmed. But what I need to do, and I hit those goals 80% of the time. I know what I need to do, and I hit those goals 80% of the time, but the noise and desire to revert back to the old comforts can sometimes be deafening. I started out pretty close to 600 pounds. I've lost almost half of that. Sorry, I got to interrupt. Bravo. Like, badass. You've lost almost half that? Like, damn, you're an inspiration. Like, I didn't lose that much. So like, hell yeah. Like, you're a badass and a rock star. Like, I've lost almost half by putting in the work. and implementing what I've learned. Yes. You said you're getting it from the podcasts, the TikToks, and the free workshops. Yes. Oh, that makes me so happy. Yes. Use the free stuff. Go change your life. Go change your life. You're doing it. So sorry, I know you weren't asking for accolades, but like I wanted to give those to you because like bravo. All right. I'm not sure. Let me back up. I started out pretty close to 600 pounds. I've almost lost half of that by putting in the work and implementing what I've learned from your podcasts, TikToks, and workshops. I'm not sure you can help due to the autism. I cannot. But I'd love to know anything specific you use to silence the little voice that says, give yourself a little day to celebrate without shame. Eat what you want. You've earned it. That little voice really pisses me off, especially when I put so much work into intuitive eating. Okay. I've only got one thought that I can't really comment. I don't know what it's like to be autistic, and I've not really studied how autism works with food and weight. That's not been an area that I've ever ventured into yet. So I hope to one day get to that place where I'm learning about neurodivergent, how being neurodivergent affects food. I do know how it does with ADHD because I have ADHD and I've had to learn a lot about that. And I know there's a little bit of crossover. So here's what I'll tell you with this one. That little voice that says, you've earned this, you get a day to celebrate. What I discovered is that was just an idea. What's the motive? The true motive behind the idea. What the true motive is, I want a reward. My brain wants a reward. It says, you deserve to treat yourself. And you know what? I don't have a problem with treating yourself sometimes, but you must treat yourself wisely. Right? As an example, don't treat yourself with $3,000 in credit card debt on a vacation. That ain't a treat. That's a treat for current you and a punishment for future you. Don't treat yourself with a whole bunch of extra food that you have to now work off over the next week. That's only a treat for current you, not a treat for future you. What I'm hearing you say, when you feel the urge to treat yourself in a way that future you is going to be happy with too. And you know what I like with that? All sorts of things to treat myself with. New pictures, new trips, new cameras, saving some money, going to see a movie. There's all sorts of things. So what I would say is when you hear that you've earned a day to celebrate and your brain goes, one cool way to celebrate would be to have some food, you just respond back with, that is a good idea, self, and I'll bet I'd like that. I wonder though, is there anything else I might also like? And just see what else makes the list. And if something makes the list, be like, okay, I want that. Can I afford it? So don't go into debt. All right, that's the one thing I got to be clear. We don't want to swap a food habit for a debt habit. But treat yourself to something, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, Andy. You know, if you feel the urge, do it. Give yourself a treat. All right, last question here. I'm not gonna be able to get to all of them on the thread. I did the ones that responded directly to me. And we're running out of time. We're right at 50 minutes. So Isabella asks, I would love to hear your thoughts on the importance of not letting the restriction feeling build up to the point that leads to overeating and indulging. Wait, hold on. Let me read that again. That builds up to the point that leads to overeating and indulging. This feeling is not about the calories itself, but what goes in it. I find way easier to stick to the calories if I'm throwing some things that I simply enjoy eating here and there. And I know you've done this. Talk more about budgeting for your snacks and how helpful it is long term. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying, Isabella. I'm pretty sure I got this. So to shift the way you handle, if you struggle with emotional eating, as I said in the beginning, you have to shift your thinking. Well, what this means is you need a new set of principles and philosophies. You need new belief systems, a new structure of thinking. And one of them that really helped me, and it helps several people when I'm working with them on emotional eating is this one. It's a new philosophy update. There are no good foods. There are no bad foods. There's just food. The other one is food is not fuel. Food is a tool, and I want the right tool for the job. And that is important. I don't like the notion that food is just fuel because that's not how humans use food. Like, we do use food as fuel, but we also use food to celebrate, to break bread together, to form community. And these things can be done in a way that is honoring your body and honoring the community, right? And honoring the celebration. And they can also be done in a way that is not honoring your community and not honoring your body and is only honoring the joy of the celebration, I suppose. You know, we use it as a free pass. And so the first thing you have to do when you're working on emotional eating is you've got to drop the judgment of foods. You could identify a food as a vice food for you, like this particular food triggers me to go crazy, but it's not because the food is bad. It's because the food triggers old emotions and old associations. So I mentioned earlier about my story with the donuts. The donuts trigger a old memory for me, right? And these old feelings. It actually still to this day, the donuts still trigger like this low grade shame that shows up within me. I don't eat donuts very often. And it's a problematic food for me. It's not because they're bad. It's just I'm aware that donuts for me, I got a lot of baggage with it that shows up. And it's important to have that distinction, which is very different than saying donuts are bad. Because if I say donuts are bad, anytime I have one, even if it's for a totally okay reason, I'm bad. We've got to avoid that. And the way we do it is we drop the judgments of foods as good or bad. We just look at food as just a tool. Food does things. I need the right tool for the job. So if I'm going to work out and I'm going to lift weights and I'm going to eat something after I lift, I need to eat protein, right? Because the tool I need for the job is protein. So eating some cheese and crackers isn't going to work. I need protein. I need something more substantive. It doesn't have to be meat. I just need protein. That's the tool I need. But let's say it's my birthday, and I'm going to celebrate my birth, and I'm going to have a little piece of cake. All right? Well, I don't want a little bowl of broccoli to celebrate it. No, the tool for the job is something indulgent that I'm going to enjoy. And when I say indulgent, it just means calorie dense and doesn't have a whole bunch of extra nutritional value, and I'm probably going to eat it for something that has nothing to do with hunger. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a slice of cake on your birthday, personally. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. No one can explain to me why it's bad now, but maybe as an individual, you're like, look, I'm not in a good place. This food is triggering to me. And on my journey, a couple of birthdays, I skipped food. It was important to me to do that. It was important for me to skip the cake. I had to demonstrate to myself that I'm capable of celebrating my birthday without cake. But I was like, I had no intentions of doing that forever. I was just doing it as a signal just to show myself I could. I needed to show myself I was different. And one year I split a piece with somebody. I didn't even have the whole thing. And so as you're working through this journey, Isabella, and you said, I find this easier if I throw in some things I simply enjoy eating here and there. That is the way to do it. I want you to lose weight in the way you plan to do it for the next 10 years. So if you're not willing to give up a food for 10 years, don't give it up. Learn to eat that food and lose weight. That doesn't mean you eat it with a free-for-all free pass. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have reasonable restrictions, or maybe you're not restricting, but rather you're regulating. See, restriction is all about can't have it, not good, off limits. Regulating is like, how can I have it? Under what conditions? Under how much? Like, I'll give a fun example. You come up with your own little silly rules. My favorite silly rule I've ever heard anybody ever come up with is I get to have one bowl of ice cream on full moons. Like, this is my favorite silly rule ever. So that way the person gets to have ice cream, but it's not up to an emotional eat. It's like the conditions have been met that were predetermined of a sound mind that when it's a full moon, I can have a bowl of ice cream. Like, I think that's great. That's such a fun rule. I had one, I could only have ice cream on a date, and it had to be the small size. And it's like, it's a fun rule. But it regulates the food intake. It doesn't say it's bad. It just identifies what conditions I can have it in so that I'm not emotionally turning to that food. I'm not overindulging in it. It allows me to have it at a frequency that doesn't mess up my goals. This is where caloric awareness can be a helpful thing to have at some point. But you don't need to develop caloric awareness right away. I didn't develop caloric awareness until 6 months into my journey. I was doing all emotional eating work and changing myself the first 6 months. I didn't call it emotional eating work at the time. I learned later that's what it was. But I was working on getting my emotional eating under control. And I'm so glad I did that, because once I added in all the data part of weight loss, I was able to supercharge it and make it work. Great questions, everybody. Thank you so much for submitting those. I'm really glad we got to talk about this. And as I said earlier, if you struggle and you have binge eating tendencies and you have things that you are worried might be a compulsion, maybe even you wonder if you have a disorder with it, I would not advise you to self-diagnose or go to Dr. Google, and definitely don't go to Dr. ChatGPT. I would encourage you to seek out a mental health professional, preferably somebody that specializes in this. I would not go to a coach necessarily first. There are some good ones out there, but if you have an eating disorder, I would strongly encourage you to seek out professional help that specializes in that and learn the therapeutic techniques that can help you begin to overcome this. There's no guilt that should be felt, and there's no shame that should be felt for having a disorder with this. Understand, in your past, you did the best you knew how under the circumstances, given your emotional and mental state of mind at the time and given what you knew at the time. You've just been doing the best you could, and that is okay. And it is also okay that you have woken up and realized that I think I'm ready for better. I think I'm ready for something different. I think I'm ready to change, and I'm ready to do it different, but I don't know how, and I'm scared, and I'm embarrassed for how long I've waited to do this. It's okay to admit that and own those feelings, but then release them, because it takes power and strength that you have to go seek a professional, to go seek support and help, to begin to change. It takes tremendous courage. You see, courage means you feel your fear and you act anyway. You don't stop. You keep going in the presence of the fear within you, and you go, and it's humbling. You humble yourself, but it is through the process of becoming humble that you will unlock the next version of yourself, and you will begin to move into the life where you are free of this binge eating. It is not a life sentence. It is something that can be overcome, but it is more than likely going to be a multi-year journey, and it is going to be fraught with setbacks. And in the beginning, it looks like failure to the outside, but those that understand know you're winning. Because just simply becoming aware that you are binge eating at the time you are doing it, just becoming aware, even if you don't stop, that is a huge win. That's a huge win, because you are becoming present as you do it. And all it takes is once, just once, for you to be present while you're doing it, and you change directions. You stop yourself mid-binge once. You just do it once. And you don't let yourself forget. You tell someone about it. You write it down. You immortalize it. You make sure that under no circumstances will you allow yourself to forget that this one time you stopped yourself mid-process. Yeah, you already slammed down 2/3 of a pizza. Who cares? You stopped. You know you were going to eat the whole pizza. You stopped. Don't ever forget that, because if you did it once, you can do it twice. If you did it once, you did something. Somehow you got yourself to do it. It might take you 6 months to figure out how to do it again. Fine, it takes 6 months. But you figured it out, and you did it once, and I did it twice. And don't let yourself forget. Document it. Journal it. I did it. I stopped mid-process a second time. It was hard. It was insanely difficult, but I did it. How did I do it? Figure that out. And what'll happen is you'll stop yourself again, and then you'll stop yourself again, and then you'll stop yourself again a little earlier. And after 2-3 years of this, you'll wake up one day and go, I don't remember the last time I had to stop myself. When was it? I remember it was like a year ago. That's what'll happen. That's what we're looking for. Hang in there, champion. Don't give up. You can overcome this. It is going to be difficult, but the beauty is I know a truth about you, and the truth about you is that you can do hard things. And it's not because the hard things are easy when you're doing them. No, the hard things are actually really hard when you're doing them. That's why we say it's hard. But you can do it. It takes tremendous strength to change and to transform. But trust me, I've been big. It takes tremendous strength to be big. It is hard. There's a lot of downsides that come with it. It's not an easy life to live. You have tremendous strength and capacity within you. Don't you dare give up on yourself. You just keep going. Yeah, you're going to fall down. You're going to slip up. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to binge. You're going to overeat again. That's okay. That's fine. Because it's not about the falling down. That's not the problem. The falling down is the expectation. But what also is the expectation is that every time you fall down, you get up. You get up. Make sure you quit staying down. Don't stay down. Every time you fall down, get up. Find yourself supportive people, and you can make it. I'll see you at the end of your quest, champion.